Okay, ready?
When we were getting the rhythm tones initially, we started way before Jamie King.
We originally started with Kemper profiles. We really kind of wanted to track analog guitar just to get that sound. The Kemper wasn't really doing it for us as far as the rhythm tones go. For leads, it's great, but as far as the rhythm goes, we wanted to get a more analog sound.
The final product was a PV6505 with a Marshall 1960 cab.
We set that up in our living room, and we used some of the couches and a blanket for a little bit of dampening. Set up microphones using like a 57 and an Audix F5. We tried a variation of the Fredman technique. We summed them down into a little Behringer mixer. Instead of two mono signals, we made it into one. And that summation created a more cohesive tone. You spend less time just worrying about the tone in the DAW because you commit to a sound early on.
Basically hooking everything up, kind of figuring out as far as gear what we wanted to go with, figuring out signal flow and all that kind of stuff, what mics.
A lot of tone testing, making sure that everything sounds good in the beginning so you don't have to do as much work later.
Yeah, I wanted it to be a little thicker in the guitars this time. My tone has always been super centric on mid-range. I kind of dialed that back just a little bit this time around. It's definitely not scooped or anything. There's still probably way more mid than a lot of people would like me to use, but that's just kind of the sound I like.
The big thing that I look for in my rhythm tones is this big beefy sound that has a grit to it, but it's also warm. Like, it's not rounded off, it's sharp. It has like this very pointed kind of texture to it.
I definitely dig a lot of it, especially on like the lows on the 7-string stuff. I think it's very beefy and sounds really, really good.
Yep.
It was a mixture of me and Cameron engineering for Ryan. We started off with Cameron tracking guitar first, and then we went to Ryan tracking. So we didn't have to deal with like a whole bunch of tone testing with him, whereas with Cameron we kind of were starting during finishing tone testing.
I'll be upfront about this. I do not like tracking. I feel that I'm extremely hard on myself. I'm aware of that, but ultimately I want to serve the vision, even if it means self-deprecating to no goddamn end.
Ryan, how much do you hate this?
The filming doesn't bother me.
Now, how much do you hate the tracking, Ryan?
A lot. It makes me have to be more self-aware of how bad I play. Again.
That's just that dark side of myself that just thinks like, oh, you're failing, you're not at the technical level of the three other guys who can play some of these things more effortlessly. But in a way, that challenge motivated me to want to write better.
He puts a lot of pressure on himself, which is both a good quality and a bad quality. There are some riffs that were harder for him than others, like we had to change a few. Those particular times were a little bit frustrating for him. But some takes, he could just knock out completely, just one take it.
There's a lot of like super minor things that he'll notice in his playing that he wants to clean up and everything, which is good. It's nice that he has the drive to do that. He's actually pretty quick as far as like getting things done really fast. That's something me and him have in common is like, if we know that we messed a take up or something like that, we just want to go ahead and redo it. Usually I can feel when I mess it up when I'm playing. So it's like, let's go. I think that's kind of why we work so well together.
I will say that I'm appreciative of Quentin and Cameron for helping me through the process, because if it wasn't for them and their constant positive reinforcement, I do not believe I would have done as well as I did on this record.
Let's go.
As far as writing rhythms, there's been more input from everyone, I think, this time around. It wasn't just like me and Ryan coming up with all the guitar parts and then just kind of, sending everything in. It was much more collaborative amongst everyone. One of us would come up with like a skeleton of a thing. Like maybe we had like a chorus or an intro and a verse, or just, a couple pieces. And then we just kind of bring it into everyone and just kind of, incorporate where we think it should go, where, peaks and valleys should be and stuff like that. Guitar-wise was something that we strove for a little bit more on this one, was messing around more with layers and just interesting harmonies and melodies rather than having the complexity of it come from, like, the actual, like, technicality of the playing.
Our overall chemistry on stringed instruments and everything is, like, it's cyclical in a way. It goes from one person to the next and then back around. In the beginning, it can be like a back and forth between two people, but overall, it's a very constructive process, and there's never really any fighting about guitar riffs or like bass riffs. The incorporation of Ben into the process is like adding another point in that circle. It passes so many barriers of filtration that by the end and everything, you might end up with something totally different. Overall, the whole process and chemistry across everybody is just kind of what I've wanted out of a band for the whole entire time I've been in bands.
I think, like, pretty early on we decided that we wanted to have this idea of specific sounds were meant to represent different actual, like, things. If it's a fast, kind of chaotic part, it's representing something of that kind of same nature, rather than just, writing a whole bunch of riffs that just kind of sound cool together and, calling it a song. Making sure that every piece was telling a story.
My favorite things in music are songs that have this dualitous nature to them, where it's always opposites. It's this super dark emotional place, and then how it could just switch into this beautiful, comforting, nostalgic driven kind of amalgamation of sorts. In my process, I don't really think about a lot of the riffs. I'll just keep playing it until it just happens. Cameron is a very different process.
Cameron's more methodical about his riffs, whereas with Ryan, it's almost like it just comes to him. And I think that's from that emotional, passionate side for this project of this band.
Ryan's writing tends to be more kind of just like straightforward, fucking like awesome metal kind of writing. A lot of like blues kind of oriented stuff, which is awesome because I don't write much of that. My focus is usually more on melody and harmony than it is specifically like rhythm playing. I'm not, a prolific rhythm player by any means. He'll do a lot more kind of like subdivision changing kind of riffs more than I would typically do. I tend to kind of try to find just something to kind of sit on for a while, like a specific vibe that I think is cool, and kind of flow with it. His riffs tend to be a little bit more, I don't know, schizophrenic. I know, it's a challenge, a lot of the stuff he brings in, which is fun.
On a playing technical level, Ryan is very, very good, especially when it comes to downpicking. Ryan can downpick like nobody else's business. It's ridiculous. You can thank James Hetfield. Some parts would be easier for him to alt-pick, but he chooses to downpick because it's easier for him. It's like what he's doing is so ridiculously energy inefficient, but he can still do it. It's crazy.
He's a really hard player. He has a really heavy right hand. Which is that's a sound that I really enjoy, when you can kind of just tell someone's really digging into it.
So you describe your chemistry guitar relationship with Ryan as being,
we have a good guitar sex life, yes. I think he has a really good ear for like hooks and just cool sounding riffs and specific vibes that he wants to kind of incorporate into different songs. I think I get caught up a lot of times with specific like technical aspects of writing something, like, whether it's guitar, orchestration, or vocal, just whatever. And it's nice to have Ryan come in just with a more direct, like, I understand what you're doing, but like it needs to sound like that. Like I'll work really hard on like a specific thing, like a riff or whatever. And he's like, dude, you could just do this and it would be just as cool. And it's like, fuck, you're right.
Some of your favorite moments while tracking?
Oh God, when the tracking was over. I feel like that when you write for a record like this intense, there's this purging of sorts. Whether it's for positive or for negative reasons, you just need to vent. And once you do that, you just can like breathe for a minute and just be like, it's fucking done. I just got to experience the creation of music and the joys of that. Because every now and then I would step out of myself and just be like, wow, look what you're doing right now. You're making a record that best exemplifies yourself and your current emotional state, and you have had this vision and you're meeting it. It's turning out better than what you ever thought it was going to turn out to be, because you have such low expectations of yourself and that you're like, wow, I actually did that. Those are some of my favorite parts.
Ryan is kind of like a catalyzing individual. As far as like how the band goes, he would be the founding member. He brings a lot of passion to all the things he does, whether it's production or whether it's guitar writing in itself. He channels emotions very well into riffs. So his contribution is almost like this emotional catalyzing element where he's able to keep everything together, even if he doesn't necessarily mean to do it, or if he wouldn't put it in those words. As far as like parts that he contributed to the album, he contributed a shit ton of parts. Like, the man is a riff machine. Cameron as well.
I think it sounds really awesome. I think it is a definite improvement pretty much in every aspect, as far as production, as far as composition and performance and everything. I think we had time this time around to really knuckle down and, you know, do the extra takes we didn't want to do, but you have to do them. You have to make it sound, you know, pretty much as perfect as it can be. And I'm super proud of the guitars this time around. I think it's awesome.
What do you feel like you did learn from that overall experience?
Stop being so goddamn hard on myself. That's what I learned. I learned if you want to fulfill a vision, you need to be willing to put yourself down to make the vision come first. For all the bullshit that I put up with and all the times I'm hard on myself, I'm reminded that it will pay off. You have to become vulnerable and be willing to fail if you want to get what you want in life, and in music, in my case.